This is a small patch of fireweed that I have growing close to my bees, and I've had fireweed honey before, when I had my hives in different locations, and the fireweed honey, it's actually translucent. It seems translucent, almost looks like water, and the honey has sort of a spicy flavor to it, and very delicate, and not a lot. It's not really my favorite honey, but a lot of people really go for it. But I'm surprised that the bees even seem to collect fireweed honey or nectar, because when I look around at this patch, and whenever I look at patches of fireweed, I rarely see honeybees on them, but I see loads and loads of bumblebees. I'm just looking right here. I can see one, two, three, four, five, six. I mean, they're everywhere. It's just bumblebees on almost every other flower. And it's probably not showing up in the shot, but like, here's a sample of one right here. See if I can get him focused there. Yeah. And the way these bumblebees pollinate or collect nectar, they're on every single flower. They don't just sort of bumble about. They hit every flower, every blossom on the flower, on the plant. And I've seen honeybees do it, and honeybees are not nearly as efficient. They do it, but you can see these bumblebees, and they don't waste any time. They just boom, then two seconds later they're there, and the honeybees are they maybe they're just not as well adapted to extracting the nectar from fireweed, but the bumblebees are just they're so quick. Like, they're in, and then, well, gone. But there's like half a second between one flower and the next. So it's impressive. If I had to, if I had concerns about pollinating crops with bees, at least certain crops, I would consider bumblebees. At least if they're suited to it. Man, because like, here's another one. Because when they go, they go. They're nonstop, right? They're working frantically, and I'd like to see how. I'd like to compare, like, how well do honeybees pollinate certain crops, and how well do bumblebees pollinate certain crops or plants, and because there's nothing but bumblebees on this, and there's no hardly any. I don't see right now. I don't see any honeybees. I'd like to learn how to raise bumblebees too, because I like them. They're very gentle too. And this is chickens. They don't do anything. But they do like fireweed. As much as I'll just pick one up. There you go, buddy. Check it out. Oh, this is food. You can eat this. Come on. Check it out. This one knows it's food. There you go. And the other one says, is this food? I didn't know this was food. Yeah, this one knows. This one will peck every. Yep, good stuff. Come on. There you go. Eat the seeds. That's food, man. Yeah, there you go. Woo, yeah. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Nice. Good work. foundationless, and they filled it all in. They did that really fast. So, let's see what's going on the other side. Yeah, same thing. So, I'm going to check to see if there's any eggs, if the queen is on there. But if they're making comb that quickly, like I think that was put in a week ago, I might put some more foundationless in there. So, my question is, having the bees cluster on the inner cover like this, is that a sign of good times or something bad gonna happen? I don't know. So, all I did was replace that rim with a 3-hole rim, because the middle rim was, the other rim didn't have any paint on it. It wasn't as good. But man, what is it with all these bees hanging out on the bottom, on the inner cover like this? I don't see the queen. And they don't look like they're, bloated with honey. Like sometimes when they gorge themselves on honey before they fly away in the swarm, but these look like small, regular bees, so I don't know what's going on. So just for today, I'm going to remove the inner cover completely and just give them complete ventilation up top and see what that does. And really, I shouldn't mess with these bees at all, but I can't help but mess with them because they're my only hive. Gotta have some fun. Gonna open these a bit, but right now the bees seem generally very relaxed. They're not too defensive. So, but again, that could be a sign that they're getting ready to swarm. They don't look swarmy to me though. I could open up the hive and find frames of swarm cells all over the place, but hopefully this is just something that they're doing because they're hot and they're just trying to cool off. But the bees are definitely, you can see they're gentle, not too worried. They're not acting, they're not trying to sting me. So, but yeah, you can see this is what I was looking for. I wanted them to use the 3 holes evenly and not have one big hole, which is to make them more defensive. These are nice holes that are easily defended and easily used, and that's exactly what they're doing. I was concerned about the bees clustering underneath the inner cover, so I asked some people online, and the information that I got was that probably the bees are clustering up underneath that inner cover just to stay out of the hive, and so there's greater ventilation inside the hive because they want to ripen honey as quick as possible, and they want to just ventilate and regulate the temperature of the hive as efficiently as possible. And when there's an extra 10,000 bees getting in the way with nothing to do, they just get out of the way. So that rim I have provides them that extra room to cluster underneath the inner cover and get out of the way of that ventilation. And that's one theory. That's one guy suggested that, and I think that's what it is. And another guy suggested that because of the hot weather, a lot of plants aren't producing as much nectar, so there just aren't as much for the scouts bees to do, because there's not enough nectar out there for them to collect, so they just sort of hang out and do nothing and then congest the hive. That's possible too, but I don't think that's really, I think there's plenty of nectar out there. So I just added a honey super, which is mostly empty, and I don't care if they lay eggs in it or put pollen in it or whatever. It's a throwaway one. It's not the best. The frames in it aren't my best frames, so I don't care what they do. And I also opened up the bottom entrance so it's completely full. I always had it a little bit reduced because the bees seemed to be a bit defensive down there, and I think it was because they had so much area to defend. But that was also blocking off some of the ventilation in the hive. It was reducing the ventilation because it's a smaller entrance. So today I opened it up completely before the bees got going. And now you can see down there, I'm not going to get in there, but they're completely covering and coming and going from the full width of that entrance. So I guess they needed that ventilation. And I'm way down here because there are a few defensive bees up there, probably because I've messed with them 3 times in the past 2 days. But yeah, they do still look very busy to me and almost kind of swarmy, because when the bees are pouring out at the bottom of the hive, like kind of like that, that's not really bad, but it is a bit crowded down there. Last time I saw that, like a lot of bees coming out of the bottom, they were swarming. They were preparing to swarm. And there's just as many bees in the top, so it's either way, lots of bees in this hive. And I've given them enough space and enough empty frames. But I would hope that they would want to work on them and not swarm. And here we are with a honeybee. Whoop, now it's gone. But that was a honeybee and a bumblebee on some fireweed. And this is just some of the fireweed here in my backyard. And by far, I would say it's covered with bumblebees. Only once in a while do I see a honeybee on it, but I can see one right over there. Anyway, the honeybees do go for it. But maybe this is a certain time of day. Here's one right here. If I can get the focus. There it is. Anyway, so yeah, maybe the nectar peaks early in the morning or something, and they get more honey out of it, more nectar out of it. But there it goes. Let's just get a shot at it here. Yeah. We have these yellow flowers, and the bumblebees definitely go for it. I don't know what they are. And we have most of the clover starting to dry up, and some goldenrod is starting to come in. So, there's no real dearth. And the fireweed here grows tall. We've been into other fields of fireweed, and that's more out in the open. And the fireweed is only really short; it's almost stunted. It's like the fireweed here. If you look at it, you can see the fireweed on the outside edges is short, and once you get in, it gets tall. And I don't know if that's because they have to compete with one another, or if this is just more in the shade, or whatever's going on. And most of the fireweed that I see around also has that's out in the open. It's all fireweed. It's all bloomed. The full flower is bloomed. But the fireweed we have here, which is in the shade part of the day, it's going through various phases of blossoming. Right, like down here, this is stuff that has blossomed and turned to seed, or whatever it is, a pod, or this is whatever it is, like yeah, I guess, is that the seed? I guess it's the seed, yeah. And so this used to be a flower, and then the flower finished and dried up and became this seed. And then we've got on top of that, we have blossoms. And then, but before the blossoms, you've got the buds, right? So you have every stage of blossoming. You got the buds, you got the blossoms, and you got the seeds all in one. And they're like that on all the fireweed here. So it's not a huge, gigantic burst, but it's a gradual source of nectar. There's still some weeks to go before these are completely dried up. So I think maybe it's because it's in a sunny but slightly shaded area. All right, here's the plan. I'm going to go in here and check to see if there's any honey being made into this honey super, if they're doing a bang-up job on it. If they're not, I'm going to leave them alone. But if they are, I'm going to add another honey super to the top of it. And these bees are some of them anyway, are pretty nasty. No, I don't think they're making honey. I think they're done. I don't think I'm going to add a honey super. But I do have 4 frames of drawn comb, fully drawn out comb that doesn't have foundation, or plastic foundation, so I can take it out later and crush and strain it. So maybe they'll like that. But right now it doesn't look like they're making honey. But boy, oh boy, they're definitely. If I wanted to, I think I could get honey out of the top heap. They were just cleaning up those frames, but they weren't putting any nectar in them. Alright, some quick notes from my own records. The bees hanging off the bottom bars in the bottom of the hive are not hanging down there so much now. There's not as much clustering going on in the bottom. Still there, but not as big, and it's been like that for a week or so. I've been noticing a lot of, on warm days, a lot of orientation flights, so there's a lot of new bees coming into the hive, and plenty of drones as well, which doesn't surprise me because the last time I pulled out frames from this top box, I added 2 completely empty frames. So if they filled those in with brood, most likely it would be drones. And that's all I've got to say. I'm just leaving them alone. And this is this is horse manure that I've used to fill in the gap between this deep and this honey super, because this is a honey super a friend of mine made, but the shape is irregular. It doesn't fit perfectly, and there's a lot of cracks in the back. So I just filled it in with horse manure. I could have used mud, but that's what I'm using. And anyway, the bees don't seem to mind it, and I think it really is filling in the crack pretty well. So I'll just do that from now on. Just use mud or manure or whatever I've got. And it's 20 degrees and humid, and bees are starting to cook. It's going to be a partial eclipse today. I'm curious to see how the bees react to that, because they do orientate themselves quite specifically with the sun, the use of the sun's rays. So should be maybe some confusion among the bees today. And I still think too, this this rim with the 3 holes for the entrances, 3 top entrances instead of 1, is the simplest and probably the smartest thing I've ever done. Because they're definitely using it when they need it, and when they don't need it, I can just plug it up in the wintertime or whatever I need to do. I can just reduce it down to 1 hole if I want to, but there's been no need for that. So that's really great. It's a really simple but really effective, because before I would have to, open up the top or the bottom or do something just to give them more room. But I think that's just give them an extra 2 holes and they're fine. I can smell the bees. It smells like honey. It smells like nectar. And the bees haven't been very as defensive lately. I think it's because they're really focused on foraging. Well, it's 1:30 p.m. on the day of the eclipse, the partial eclipse, and I don't think the eclipse has anything to do with this, but man, oh man, there's a lot of bees on the front of this hive. This is a heavy-duty orientation, and I hope it doesn't mean swarming. But under normal circumstances, I would consider this like borderline swarming. They're coming and going down there. But yeah, that's a lot of bees trying to come and go. But I can see by the way they're flying. You can't see it in this angle. I'll go in the other angle. But I think most of these are orientation flights. There we go. You can see they're sort of hovering in front of the hive a lot. And it's sort of orientation. It looks like orientation flights to me. I see bees coming and going with, or coming in with pollen. So I don't know. Do bees, when they're about to swarm, are they still bringing in pollen, or do they just shut that down? I don't know. It's August 25th, 24 degrees Celsius, a little bit after 10 a.m. and a little bit of wind on the go right now. Can't see much of it in here, but if we go up to the bees that are orienting around the front of the hive, you can kind of see them getting blown by the wind. You can't see it. No, here we go. You might, no, not enough bees blowing, but when there's a lot of bees, you can see them swaying in the wind when a gust comes by. But anyhow, a lot of bees down in the bottom too, and on top. And I don't want to mess with them, but I am curious to see what they're doing in this honey super. So I'm just going to take a quick look, see if they're doing anything in it. If they're building comb or filling it up or doing anything in there, I'm going to pull at least 1 frame, because there's 10 frames in there, and I'm going to, so that they'll build thicker comb on the frames that are in there, and they'll concentrate on fewer combs, but give me thicker combs. So I'm going to throw, it'll be 1 or 2 frames are going to disappear if they're working it, and hopefully they are. And I don't know where I'm going to put the camera, because I don't have my little thingy to do it. Anyway, we'll see. All right, I got the camera hanging up in the tree, just on a branch. It's as good as it gets. It smells like honey. They had that stuck down pretty good with propolis. As usual, lots of bees stuck to the top of the... Whoops. Whoops. Oh geez. I should have gloves with this. If I get stung, I'll be out of here real fast. Lots of propolis. Yeah, it doesn't feel heavy with honey. No. No. No brood. See some bees doing a waggle dance. They are putting nectar in some of the honey for... Oh yeah, a little bit of nectar coming in. Not much. No, nothing going on here. See, a little bit of nectar. Again, some waggle dancing going on my side. No pollen. Few drones. Well-behaved bees. I'll take one more look at one more frame. Yeah, this is interesting. This is new to me. Have bees crawling on my hands. Okay, no, nothing here. No, nothing here. I mean, they're cleaning out they've got their heads stuck in the frames, in the cells. So they're cleaning them out. They're getting them ready, but they're not filling it up yet. All right, so they're not making honey. I mean, they're cleaning up they look like they're cleaning up the comb, but I don't see any honey happening, so. With any luck, this whole top deep is full of honey instead. And that's it. I will put it all back together. And you can see, or you can't see, there's a lot of glue. This is all propolized, which is basically they glue everything together, and they've done a great job gluing everything together. And I just unglued it for them. There's a wood right here. Keep the screen and the inner cover lifted up so that they can walk faster. Okay, so that's it. They're not filling that top honey super with honey like I'd hoped, but maybe maybe this top deep is full of honey instead, which is still a significant amount of honey. So I have no need to fight with them at all. They're not making enough honey for me to do anything with those frames. This colony started off weak and basically stayed sort of, it was healthy, just not gigantically strong, I guess. This is a quick note. It's August 30th, 2017, and the fireweed is pretty much done. It's all been reduced to more or less this little bits of flowers on top of the plants, like that. And most of these things down here are these big thingy-jiggies. They're pods that will eventually become seeds that look like this. Little cotton thingies that float and fill the sky with little bits of cotton seeds floating everywhere. So anyway, end of the month, end of August, they're done. And for the past couple of weeks, we've had goldenrod like this coming in. And that's generally, I think, what the bees are bringing in for the most part. It's got a really strong perfume to it, and you can smell it being next to the flower, but you can also smell it when I'm over there by the hives, because they're curing the nectar from this goldenrod, and it's the fragrant perfume is just wafts through the air. It's pretty incredible. Anyhow, fireweed done, goldenrod kicking in.